7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Marketing Essentials Podcast. Today we're going to be talking to you about what to look out for when shooting a promotion video. I'm Alicia Piazza with Custom Marketing Solutions.
I'm Justin of Justin Kerr Design.
And I'm Bill of W. Palmentier Photography. And together we make up
the Marketing Essentials team.
So today we are going to be discussing what to look out for when shooting a promo video.
Yeah.
This is an area we've kind of got a little bit of experience in.
Should we define what a promo video even is?
I think that's a great idea,
Okay.
actually. I think the key that, I think this definitely
We'll let you take that, Bill. You define the promo video.
Well,
our resident photographer and videographer.
A promo video is basically a way to get out to your audience who you are and what you do. Mm-hmm. Usually it's in a short form video, anywhere from 1 to 3 minutes, maybe 5 minutes tops.
So it's not like a whole documentary.
No. There'd be some people that would want to do that. In some cases, it will have more than just a person speaking. So there's a number of different ways to define a promo video. But basically, at its simplest form, it's a way of explaining to people what your business is and what you do.
Like a commercial.
Yeah, basically a mini
And you could
commercial.
also do one for an event.
True,
Right?
true,
Mm-hmm.
yes. So yeah, that's another way of doing it.
I know 1 minute doesn't sound like a lot of time, but 1 minute of video is actually quite a bit of information, if you do it right.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So what you said 1 to 3 minutes. So what would be an example of, the longer format?
A longer format's typically going to be a situation where you're going to have a lot of what they call B-roll. And I know before you say it, I know you're going to say, what is B-roll? What do we do with that?
I thought it was sushi.
I love sushi.
Yeah.
No, that's California roll.
Oh, okay.
Well, you were close. Now, basically, B-roll is footage that isn't your primary subject. So basically, all that means is it's a fancy way of saying, let's say you're promoting a factory. Mm-hmm. B-roll may be footage of just somebody going across the factory floor, showing what goes on at kind of a high level.
Mm-hmm. Or detail on some machinery running, or
Yeah, exactly. So it's not something that's necessarily imperative to what you're talking about, but it enhances it.
Cool.
Okay.
So that's the best way to put that. So if you start adding things like B-roll in, and you can get it to up to about 2 or 3 minutes real easily. You can go quick, you'd be surprised how fast. But if you're doing just a basic talking head video, a minute and a half tops. You really don't need to go much more than that.
Because I'm thinking they're not really promotional, but they're commercials, Most of them are between 20 and 30 seconds. Then you get the longer ones, which are usually for prescription medications, where they go into an explanation of everything.
That whole list of things that you can't.
Yeah, everything that will kill you.
Yes.
Those tend to be about a minute. And they pack a lot of information, into those commercials, and they have a lot of B-roll kind of video too.
They show a lady running through the field with her dog, and she's happy.
Yeah,
like that type of.
Exactly.
And she's sleeping well.
What was the one with was it like Cialis or something like that, where they had the tubs out over the vista? It was
I never understood that.
I didn't either.
The side-by-side tubs. It's like, how is that romantic?
Especially with the product that they were trying. Never mind.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
So
that's B-roll footage, basically.
Okay. So
Pharmaceutical
1 to 3 minutes for a promo video. All right. So, and it's used to, obviously promote your business.
Sure.
Any type of business can use a promo video, I would assume.
Yes, absolutely. Now, there are some criteria you have to think about before you even start. Well, actually, there's a list of things you want to go through during the process of putting together a promo video. But first and foremost, the thing you want to look at is, what is your end goal? What are you going to be using it for? Are you going to be using it for a website? Are you going to be using it for social media? You might even be using it on regular, good old-fashioned television. Those things are all going to kind of input into what your final decision is.
Right. Now that's
Format-wise, yeah.
But it meant there's some strategy here too.
Sure. You want to make sure. Well, before we go to that point, first you have to go. No, it's okay. We're getting to that point, but the reality is you want to figure out the quality of it first. If you're doing a quick promo that's going to go up on Facebook, it may not have a need to be very polished.
Okay.
Of course, some are polished. I'm not saying that that's an exclusive thing.
But you can get away with
a little bit more.
An iPhone on a tripod and some decent lighting and not a whole lot of, production quality or fuss.
It's kind of like what the user expects. Like if you saw something like that on Facebook, it'd be like, okay, cool, yeah, like it's social media. But then if you saw that on TV, you'd be like, what the?
Yeah, if you saw that as a commercial on like a TV break, you'd be going, hey, and come to
selfie
right.
mode.
or that would be
iPhone video with the guy doing a selfie.
Although it would probably get your attention.
It might.
It would, but I would
not good
probably
way.
the wrong kind.
question the quality of the food, maybe.
Yeah.
It's like So yeah, you're right. On social media, I think the expectations are going to be a little bit lower. On a website, a little more formal. On broadcast, even more.
Mm-hmm.
So
then the next step, once you've decided what you're going to be using it for, and that's not. Let me back up for one more second and say that you can use videos multi-platforms, but ideally you want to sit down before you even start and say, okay, where is the primary area I'm going to be using these? Then the next thing is a storyboard. You're familiar with storyboards,
yeah.
Basically a storyboard or script. Sometimes it's drawn out in like a cartoon form. Looks like the old comic strips.
Yeah, but you're basically blocking out what you want to happen.
Exactly. At the very least, you want to have a basic outline of what you're going to be speaking about. Mm-hmm. You don't want to have to stumble through trying to figure out, okay, the day of the shoot, how am I going to do this video?
Yeah, we discovered that, didn't we?
Well, yeah, I mean, we had a basic script, but we found out that there were pitfalls to that. There were certain things, especially when we weren't actors. It was real easy to get caught up in the, I am not reading a cue card type of thing,
Well, we got very focused on the content. We did have a script, but what we forgot was it also you have to memorize it.
Exactly.
It has to look natural. There's things to consider like what your face looks like, what kind of expression you have.
You can't change what your face looks like sometimes.
Well, what I meant.
You should probably be wearing a mask, he meant. No, I'm just kidding.
Is your facial expressions,
Yes.
Are you smiling or like me, do you have a severe case of RBF?
I was going to say, Justin, he just has no poker face. That's all it is.
I have one face is what I have.
One face.
But what you do with your hands and how to frame it. I mean, there was a lot more to it than just the script and the content. And we kind of learned that very quickly. It's like, wow, there's all these other things to consider.
We are not professionals
now,
yet.
Now, the other thing to keep in mind is part of the storyboard is you also want to figure out where the cuts are going to be. Like when we were doing the promo video, for those of you who haven't seen it, we've got a promo video up on our YouTube page that you can see the actual final cut. And I think we actually still have the bloopers from that, which was kind of fun just to see.
Bloopers actually worked out better, I think, than the promo video.
I think that was one of our more popular videos, but anyway. I lost my train of thought there.
Editing.
Cutting is something important that you want to think about, or at least the person that's going to be producing the video for you needs to be thinking about ahead of time. Because there's nothing more boring than having just one person's face and no cuts in and out.
Yeah.
That's why B-roll falls into place a lot of times, is so you can cut in and out while somebody's narrating, so to speak. So you put a face to the person for a second or two, then you show some B-roll as they're continuing to talk, back to the person. Car salesmen are great for doing that. When you start seeing the car commercials on TV, watch a few of those.
Right.
They all cut in and out constantly. They'll be showing the car, and then they'll be talking, and they'll be showing people in the car, and so on and so
it's
forth.
effective because there are two different parts of your brain that are processing the information. There's the part of your brain that's processing what's being said, and another part of your brain which is processing the images, and you're responding to them in different ways. One's more emotional and visceral, and the other one is more logical, and you're processing what's being said. So you can do quite a bit of cutting and still have the person get the content, get what you're saying. Exactly.
Then the next step is okay, you figured out your storyboard, you figured out your script, B-roll footage if you need any. That's easier in some professions than it is in others to find B-roll.
What would you say would be a really tough one to shoot B-roll in?
Lawyers, It's not-
CPAs?
CPAs.
Yeah.
A lawyer is tough because you can't follow them in the courtroom and and video them as they're hammering away at a witness or something.
Right.
So
what would you do in that case? What would the B-roll be?
I'd probably use something along the lines. It's kind of cliche, but them doing a consultation in their office setting with
Okay.
somebody, and have them narrating the background a little bit about what they do, how they do it. Lawyers is probably a bad analogy, only because of the fact that there's so many bad lawyer commercials out there.
Yeah, well,
Really?
Nah, just a few.
so let's take a different approach. What if you were doing something for CPA, an accounting firm?
Again, same thing. I would do something along the line of them sitting down with specific clients, maybe going to their job site and talking to them. I thought about something you talked about in one of your previous podcasts where you had done something for a bookkeeper, where you showed the different walks of life that bookkeeper helped. I think one was a construction worker, one was
Small business
owner. Maybe I would use video of them meeting with them at their job site.
Okay.
I like that.
So that may be something like that you would think about doing as far as B-roll.
Well, see, here's the thing. I wouldn't think of that. I would hope my professional videographer would.
Well, that's the hope that they have a good idea. Now, but
Yeah.
if somebody is going to sit down, if you're going to sit down with a videographer, hopefully they're going to sit down way ahead of time and say, what is your goal?
Right.
It's like everything else. It's like building a website or putting together a social media presentation.
What are your goals?
What are your goals?
Yeah.
You can't just
Yeah.
guess and go into it and hope that you have all the answers, because it's not going to work out that way.
And more specifically, what do you want people to do as a result of watching this video? Do you want them to
What's the call to action?
go to your website and download something? Do you want them to come into your store? Do you what is it you want them to do?
Is it a
Because
specific service or one part of your business or an
Sure.
overall? Yeah.
Sure.
Right.
What's the ask? So that's a very important part of sitting down and getting ready to do this. So now you got that. You get your storyboard, your B-roll. Next thing to worry about is lighting. This is something a lot of people don't give any real thought to, because unless you're in the videography or photography field, you don't think about light.
Yeah.
I mean, my question to you guys is, when was the last time you went and took a selfie and went, oh, the light's wrong?
I don't remember the last time I took a selfie. So
Yeah.
I do. It was at one of our podcasts. It was the three of us.
oh right,
Right.
when you were demonstrating the funky little gimbal thing.
Yes.
Yeah, that was cool.
So.
Just setting up for this, even when Bill's done some shots of us, I don't consider the lighting. I'm just like,
Yeah.
lights are on, we're good. It's not like the angles or how it's going to make people look.
That's exactly it. So you got to think about that. Now, even if you get to that point, the first thing that people do when they see somebody talking is, as I bang into my earpiece here, is listen. If you've got crappy audio, pardon me, but
Yeah.
no easy way to say it. If you've got crappy audio that's cutting,
Yeah.
Just lost 5 listeners right there. See?
sorry guys,
That was everybody.
Yeah.
we just lost all of our listeners because they thought the
Mom,
quality
come
went up.
back.
But yeah, I mean, before you do that, you want to check the acoustics of the area you're doing. I mean, the room we're in currently is not my favorite as far as acoustics, but there is something to be taken into consideration. Does it echo when you talk? Does it have some sort of real deadening sound where you can barely hear yourself talk if you're screaming? Do you have to
Right.
scream?
Is there ambient noise
Yeah, it's a lot of
around?
problems.
Distractions, yep.
So that's something that you need to take care of. And the biggest thing to remember is when you're doing any type of audio for video purposes, echo is the hardest thing to get rid of. So if you've got a lot of ambient echo noise in the background, you might as well start over. As I say that, we get some ambient noise going over here.
Right.
So that's that. And then, of course, I'm going to take us to the final part of the whole setup, and we know this one all too well. Be prepared to shoot multiple takes.
Well, why would we have to do that?
I don't know, you tell me.
Because
Because us
all
videographers
of
just
the
like
above.
to keep
right.
having you do it over and over again.
Well, I would imagine, when you're working with clients, it's pretty rare that you're going to have somebody who is a professional in front of the camera. So, there's going to be things like getting them comfortable to be in front of the
Sure.
camera.
Right.
They're going to, if they're reading from a script or they've memorized a script, They're not going to get it right at the first time.
Nope.
Something's always going to happen. Maybe the lighting's not quite right. Maybe like a dog ran across across your shot or something,
Sure.
or anything.
Photobombed by a dog.
Photobombed by a dog. I ran into this a lot when I was art directing photo shoots for university that I worked for. And, things that you don't think about just in everyday life. But when you set up a photograph, you got to take into consideration, is there a garbage can in the shot?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a telephone pole in the shot? Is there something that's not supposed to be there? You really have to pay
Sure.
attention to make sure that, because you're creating a scene,
Mm-hmm.
and now you wouldn't think about that just walking down the sidewalk, but when you're trying to set up a shot, there are certain things you want to be a certain way, and you have to prepare for those.
Yeah, and the reality is nowadays, when it comes to things like photos, it's a little bit easier if you make a mistake and miss that trash can. Yeah, I can Photoshop that out afterwards. It's a lot harder to work around something that gets in a shot on a video that you didn't notice at the time. So you really need to stage the area properly to make sure you don't have that stuff.
Well, the thing, you look with a photo, let's say there's a garbage can that, is in the shot. We go in 20 minutes, you can probably get rid of that garbage can. Now you're talking about a 1 minute video, right? That's 30 frames a second.
Yep.
How many seconds in a minute? 60, right? So how many frames is that? You would have to go in and wipe that garbage can
1,800.
out. We're talking about hours and hours worth of work.
Yeah.
So it'd be easier just to remove it from the beginning.
Sure, absolutely. So those are the things you have to take into account when you're doing that. And the other thing behind doing multiple takes is, even if you nail the take the very first time, you still need to try it a couple more times, because you may find that by the time you get in 2 or 3 takes of it, you're sounding better. You decide, this doesn't sound so good. I want to change this specific sentence, or this.
Your ponytail was sticking up over your shoulder. Or
Like a dead rat?
Yeah, lots of stuff.
Or is it dead squirrel, I think is what you call it.
Dead squirrel, yeah.
So, but yeah, those are the type of things you got to look out for. And so when it comes to doing a promo video, you got to really take some time ahead of time and think, how do I do this?
All right.
Now, when you're talking promo video for your business itself, it's a little bit different than shooting a promo video if you're a restaurant, per se, and you're doing a promo video for the latest menu item that you got coming out. That's going to be a little bit different, obviously.
So when you sit down with a client and they come to you and say, I want to shoot a promo video, say it's a restaurant, obviously you're going to cover all these things that you just talked about, like what's the goal here? What is it you want people to do as a result of this video? Script, B-roll, lighting, audio, all of that. What's the process you take them through? I mean, obviously you meet with them first.
Excuse me.
And just kind of walk us through what's the process?
Well, obviously, first I'm going to find out what type of promo video they're looking to do, because, again, like I said a few minutes ago, it's a very different thing if they're just trying to promote their business versus trying to promote a specific dish. We're taking the idea of a restaurant at this point. I'm going to look at it very differently if I'm doing just their latest summer menu versus doing trying to promote their entire business. So now if they're talking about the entire business, I'm going to say, okay, well, what makes you unique? We've talked about the unique value proposition. Okay, well, what makes you unique as a business? During the course of that, we're going to sit down and we're going to put together a storyboard of some sort, whether it's just an outline, or I'm not a good artist as far as drawing, so I'm going to more than likely do an outline. And we'll sit down and we'll say, okay, well, what are you looking to do? What part of your business makes you unique from others? What do you want to highlight as far as what you do? Then we'll start thinking about, okay, well, what footage do we need that's going to enhance that? Obviously, in a restaurant setting, you want to show the ambiance of what the place looks like when it's busy, when people are enjoying.
So you've got to take that into consideration. You're not going to shoot an empty restaurant, right?
I mean, you can, so you can give an idea of the decor, of what it looks like. But ideally, the best thing to do would be to say, okay, when you have, what night are you busy? Come down and do some B-roll footage for that night.
Yeah.
Now, it can be a little bit of a inconvenience for the restaurant owner to have to do that, because obviously you're bringing lighting and video and all kinds of stuff going on there.
Yeah, but I mean, part of the ambiance is people in the space.
Yep. I actually, okay.
The only time I would maybe not use people is if you're trying to show like a banquet hall, like the size of it or something, or like you said, the decor, like a wedding venue or something. I don't know.
And then the other option is if you don't want to interrupt your clientele coming into the restaurant. I have another photographer friend who does basically just photography. He doesn't do videography, but he just recently did a shoot where the client wanted customers. The restaurant had an outdoor deck where people could sit in front of the building, eat their meal, and so on and so forth. But they didn't want to interrupt their regular clients, their customers coming in. So they actually met at 3:30 in the morning, brought a bunch of extras in.
Wait, isn't it dark though?
But yeah, because he wanted a night scene. He wanted it to look the way the place would look if you went for an evening meal.
That's interesting.
And so they started at 3:30 in the morning and shot till about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, just taking pictures of the front of this building with people sitting pretending to eat. So
Now, were these professional models or just friends and family?
sometimes it's friends and family. I think in this case it was just friends and family of the owner.
Okay.
But in some cases it will be extras.
It's a big ask for friends. Hey, what are you doing at 3:30
3:30
in the morning? Need some pasta?
Well, I mean, they may have put a call out to what they call an extras call,
Yeah.
where they may have said, "Hey, we'll give you each a gift certificate to come eat here. If you want to come meet us for 4:30 in the morning, this is
Right.
the dress code we want you to look like.
Yeah.
Come and join us." You know,
Now,
But the
something
things
like-
to think about there.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Alicia.
sorry. No, just the things to think about, the planning.
so that works as far as for both photo and video. I'm just explaining that there are certain ways around things if you don't want to really disrupt the flow of what's going
Right.
on in your business.
But, considering the logistics of putting a shoot like that together, you get a bunch of people together, you do a shoot at 3:30 in the morning, you've got lighting to consider, you've got your storyboard and everything else. So let's say that shoot takes you 3 hours to do, right? Not including the planning leading up to it.
Sure.
How much mileage can you expect to get out of that footage now that you've got it? You've shot it, you've edited it down, you have it.
You can get a lot out of it, and especially when it comes to video, not so much with photography, but when it comes to video, the reality is a lot of it gets left on the cutting room floor, so to speak. I'm using an old term, but you know what I mean. To the extent of I may shoot in the course of video, for a 1-minute video, I may shoot 20 minutes of video. So I'll cut that down to 1 minute. Now it can be, depending on how we've talked about it ahead of time, more than likely it's going to be used on their website, on social media. It could be on a number of social media channels, depending on what they're aiming aiming for, I should say. And then ultimately, might even be able to use some of the stuff that was discarded for the first one to make a secondary video later on down the line, to make that B-roll or something, especially if the client is looking long term.
Okay.
As opposed to just looking beyond tomorrow.
You could get a lot of mileage out of it then.
Sure. And now we've talked in previous podcasts about how much it costs to do something like that, but it can get a little bit on the expensive side when you start getting into extras and getting people, like I said, 3 o'clock in the morning to go do a shoot.
Yeah.
It's going to be.
But so, even if you're shooting B-roll of an empty restaurant, but well lit and everything, I mean, so a little bit less logistic-wise, but still you get a lot of mileage out of that.
And then the other thing you got to think about when it comes to promo videos is you want to look at what do you want to convey besides that? Do you want somebody narrating?
Like a voiceover?
A voiceover, yeah.
Okay.
Now it's another expense, but you'll get a professional narrative of what you're trying to put forth. So now you're putting a voice to it.
Or I'm thinking some of the local commercials, you just get the owner.
That happens too. That happens too.
Sometimes that works out.
Sometimes not so much.
Yeah, I
Sometimes
think on
not
the
so much.
radio I notice it more because it's just their voice and you're just like, oh, maybe they should hire somebody.
Voice actor might be a good investment here, yeah.
They got a voice for silent film, right? But the reality is now that's a very different type of promo video versus doing something that is text on the screen as well as maybe a background music.
Right.
That's going to be a little less expensive, but it's not going to be as polished. I've done videos. Alicia and I have worked together with a client where we did videos that were showing specific dishes that the restaurant was doing, and there was no voice to it. It was all music in the background, and then the chef putting it together, and then a final look at what was done at the end.
Yeah.
So that's a very different type of setup than the restaurant owner coming in and saying, yeah, and we put this into the bowl and this, and we made this, and we did that. it costs a little bit more when you start getting into that end of it because there's a lot more heavy editing as
Mm-hmm.
far as that end. So
Makes sense.
What would you say is the biggest challenge for you in planning and shooting and editing promotional video?
I think the biggest challenge is getting the client on board. The reality of it is in this day and age, and we've had other interviewees in the past, and we've also talked about it, is getting people to see the value in what you're doing. I find that when my clients realize that there's a value behind just doing a video versus taking out my iPhone and trying to do a video with this, and seeing the difference between the two, they get it.
Right.
But until you get to that point where you can convince somebody, what I'm about to offer you is going to be a lot better than what you could do with your iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
It's an uphill battle from that up till that point. Once you get to that point, the value to that is, look, you're going to put your business in a light that people have not seen before.
Mm-hmm.
No pun intended, but
Yeah.
but it's going to be
No, it takes it up a level. I mean, a lot of these things you don't notice until you see a comparison, you know, between a professionally done video and somebody who grabbed their iPhone and shot something. I mean, I see it all the time in stock photography. There's a huge range of quality in stock photography, and you can tell the professional photographers from the, you know, guy that's got a phone.
And the thing is, we're also conditioned as to what we see on TV and what we see on the internet. We're conditioned to see things a certain way. A lot of cuts. Jump cuts are a big thing, to the bane of the existence of most videographers. They're a pain in the butt to cut from one scene to another, to another, to another. But most
Scene or angle, do you mean?
scene, angle, maybe
Both.
zoomed in, zoomed
Okay.
out. Cuts are when you go to any type of different, within the video changes in one way or
Okay,
another.
okay.
It may be a zoom in, it may be cut to a B-roll, it may be cut back to the person speaking.
Okay.
But the more of those you have, the bigger nightmare it is for the guy that's doing or the gal that's doing the editing. Jump cuts are something that our minds as humans are used to seeing because we're flooded with it on internet,
Yeah,
TV.
we've been conditioned.
Yeah, condition is the better word, yes. So when you see something that is not filled with jump cuts, your mind recognizes that and says, wait, there's something not right about this. You may not necessarily recognize it right off the
Well,
bat.
it's different. You may not say there's something not right about this. I think it depends on this goes back to the strategy and what your goals are. Because I'm thinking about the difference between, a promotional video, say on one of the broadcast channels that's promoting a sports event, right? There's going to be lots of things going on in that promotional video. Lots of jump cuts, graphics flying at you, people running around. Now compare that to a documentary, on PBS. Very different.
Yeah, most of the time you'll see the jump cuts, but they're much more subtle.
And then, go from scene to scene, they're going to be, like you said, more subtle, but you're also going to get just longer sustained shots.
Sure, I agree.
And so I think there's a certain style that you need to consider too. There's nothing wrong with either one of those, but you wouldn't do the sports style on PBS, and you certainly wouldn't do the PBS style.
Sure, no, but what I'm saying is what I was comparing was when you see something that there are no cuts at all.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
it's
notice it.
very-
You'll notice it.
You notice
It's
it,
boring.
absolutely.
You may not understand what you're seeing, but your mind will realize something just seems different about this. It may not be wrong,
Yeah.
but it seems different.
Yeah.
And it may be, it may be appropriate for what you're promoting.
Sure.
You know, I mean, if you're promoting, say, an assisted living community, right? You're gonna shoot that and you're gonna edit that very differently than
Sure.
if you're promoting a sporting event. You know, so the cutting will be different, the pacing will be different, and I'm assuming that's where, sitting down with the client and going, okay, what are we videoing?
What's the goal?
What's the goal here? What do you want people to do when they see this? And that's going to determine a lot of things, including the style of editing and the style that you're going to shoot.
Sure. And so it really does go on a case-by-case basis, but the key is sitting down and talking with somebody, because we've said it many, many times in this podcast, our jobs as business owners are not to know how to do everything. That's why they have professionals. That's why there are marketing professionals out there, and design professionals, and photographers, and videographers. It's because nobody should have to try to do it all themselves.
Right.
Right.
Or
And
else you're going to be doing many, many shots instead of just multiple takes, like
Right.
days worth. Like,
Exactly.
And just because there are better tools now, like, the cameras and the phones get better all the time. There are software tools that are very inexpensive for editing video, but just because those are available doesn't mean, that you can do without the expertise and the experience of working with somebody who knows how to use the tools.
yeah.
Exactly.
It's kind of like if you were a plumber or a carpenter, like just because I bought some tools at Home Depot doesn't mean I can go home and fix my own stuff.
You mean if I get a Photoshop package, it doesn't mean that I can be a graphic designer?
No. No.
Hey, I have Facebook, though, so I'm a social media marketer.
Listen, I do things at home, certain fix-it things, but there are certain things I'm like, no, I need a professional. I'm not going to monkey with my electrical work, right?
Nah.
Plumbing and electrical are the two things I don't touch.
I call somebody in
Agreed.
because,
too much damage.
there's too many things that could go wrong.
Especially when you mix electrical and water. It's not good.
Yeah, it's not really good. Or I just don't have the time.
Sure, that's the other thing.
It's like, look, I'm going to hire an expert to come in and do this while I do other things that are, a better use of my time.
Sure. So I think we've covered everything unless anybody else has any other commentary they want to throw in there.
No, I just think all the points that you have outlined here, it's good for the business owner to take them into account if they're trying to get a promotion video together. But if you're working with a professional, they're pretty much going to just do it for you.
Sure,
Yeah.
that's the hope.
And the outcome will be much better. And one thing that we didn't talk about at the very beginning is why use video to begin with. And that's because video is,
In case you haven't heard.
it's hot right now.
You think? I'd say the majority of my business has kind of shifted more towards video lately than photography. I mean, I still do some photography, but definitely a lot more video.
Well, there was, Alicia, maybe there's a statistic that you cited, or maybe I read in one of the articles you sent out about a large percentage of people preferring video over, a piece of text.
Oh, was that the LinkedIn one that I sent the other day?
I think was it you that sent
It
the
said
article?
80% of people would prefer watching a video over text.
Which
Yeah.
is crazy. I mean, that's a big number, a big percentage.
Yeah.
And they're saying by 2020, it's going to be closer to 95% of people will be counting on video versus imagery or text or anything else. Even the infographics are kind of slowly working their way out of things. But
So the fact that, people are preferring that, Facebook, Google, all the rest have adjusted their algorithms to favor video online. It makes sense to use it. Makes sense to use it in your marketing. It makes sense to use it, on your website, your social media.
and even more the reason to hire a professional to do it now, because with more and more people going to be jumping on that video bandwagon.
You need to differentiate
You need to
yourself.
differentiate yourself.
Stand out,
you know?
yeah.
It may be that drone video shot that comes in over your restaurant, or pulling out away from it. Those are the type of things that can get thrown into a video that you may not do yourself, or it may be, a nice drive-by shot. Wrong words to use, but
Don't advertise that service.
yeah, we don't do drive-bys, okay, people. Wow.
Yeah.
Full disclosure here that we're towards the end of our podcast day, so
Yeah.
I think we're all a little punchy. But
Little punchy. But yeah, it's a good point. They're working with a professional. They're going to be able to sort of think outside the box. They'll be able to think from the outside perspective. I mean,
Yes.
as a business owner, you have that, it's curse of inside thinking. It's
Sure.
like it's hard for you to look at your business from the point of view of a prospect. But a videographer can come in and have that point of view, and he can suggest things that you wouldn't have thought of, angles, different types of shots, props, lots of things that you're not necessarily going to be thinking about because, you're not a photographer, you're not a videographer, you're a business owner, you know what you do really well.
Sure. Yeah, so it really comes down to how much do you want to stand out from your competition? Ultimately, I hate to throw that gauntlet out there and say,
Right.
but the reality is everything we've been doing with this podcast, the webinar, is all about how are you going to put yourself a step ahead of your competition.
Yep.
Right.
So if you're not doing that, then you're going to fall behind, unfortunately. So having said that, that's a perfect segue into us talking about how you can shamelessly plug us, Justin.
Well, if you liked what you heard on today's podcast, you can check out our other podcasts on marketingessentialsteam.com. We have a podcast page where we published all our previous podcasts. You can also subscribe to them on iTunes. You can check out more information about us on our Facebook page at Marketing Essentials Team. And you can contact us through the Facebook page if you have questions about anything related to marketing or photography or social media or design and branding.
Yes.
We also have a Facebook group, a private group that you can apply to. And that has to do with marketing as well, but I'm going to let Alicia explain a little more in detail about what that is.
So you can find the Facebook group at Little Rhody Marketing Support Group, and it's a community for local businesses, small to medium businesses, and other marketing professionals to kind of just have an ongoing conversation where we can businesses can post about their marketing struggles and challenges, success stories, and then to kind of converse with other local marketing professionals and get some advice. And
Yeah, it's a great community. It's fun to see some of the wins that are happening on a weekly basis for certain businesses, and also to be able to help each other out. So it is it is a closed group, so you would have to ask for permission. But as Alicia says, we don't turn away anybody. So
as of right now, we'll let you in.
And finally, I think Justin touched on the podcast. You can see the podcast through our website. But if you're one of those people that likes to listen in your car as you're driving around, we also have the podcast available through iTunes. Just look for the Marketing Essentials Team, and you'll find it there.
And we'd like to give a shout out to our venue host today, which is Rooms and Works. They're a co-working space in Providence, and you can find them online at roomsandworks.com.
Until next time, I guess it's time for us to say goodbye, right?
Yes, say goodnight, Gracie.
Tongue-tied. Can you just... Until next time. Bye.
See ya.